My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I've spent the last 10 years living in a house filled with silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the suffocating kind. The kind that wraps around you like a heavy fog, making it hard to breathe. The silence began the day my sister, Emily, disappeared. She was only 15, full of dreams and laughter, and I was her protector, the older sister who promised to always keep her safe. But promises are fragile, easily broken, and that day I failed her in the worst possible way. It was a Saturday, a day like any other. We had plans to go to the mall, to shop for new clothes and grab some ice cream. But before we could leave, the phone rang, and my life changed forever. I remember the sound of my mother's voice, shaky and filled with dread. "Sarah, you need to come home now." When I arrived, the police were already there, their faces grim, and my heart sank as I took in the scene. Emily was missing. They believed she had run away, but I knew my sister, and I knew she would never leave without saying goodbye. The police searched for days, but as the weeks turned into months, the silence in our home grew louder. My parents stopped talking, stopped looking at each other, and I was left to navigate the wreckage alone. I took to writing, pouring my heart into pages filled with pain and longing. I wrote poems about Emily, about the darkness that had swallowed her whole, and about the silence that filled our home. Years passed, and I became a shadow of my former self. At 25, I was still living in the same house, still surrounded by the echoes of what once was. I worked part-time at a bookstore, spending my days buried in stories that helped me escape. But the silence at home was always waiting for me. One rainy evening, I was organizing the poetry section when I stumbled across a book of Emily's favorite poems. The spine was cracked, and the pages were dog-eared, remnants of a girl who loved to dream. I picked it up, my fingers trembling as I flipped through the pages. Each poem reminded me of her laughter, her spirit, and the promise I had made to protect her. A wave of emotion crashed over me, and I sank to the floor, the book clutched to my chest. I began to cry, the tears flowing freely as I mourned the sister I had lost. Suddenly, a voice broke through my sorrow. "Are you okay?" I looked up to see a young man standing before me, his expression filled with concern. He had tousled dark hair, deep brown eyes, and an aura of warmth that made the coldness of the bookstore feel a little less suffocating. "I'm fine," I replied, trying to wipe away my tears, but he didn't move away. "I'm Liam," he said, offering me a hand. "Do you come here often?" I hesitated, wondering if I should let him in, but there was something about his presence, something that felt safe. "I work here," I admitted, finally taking his hand. "Just organizing poetry?" he asked, his smile encouraging me. "That sounds like a fantastic way to spend your time." I couldn't help but smile back, if only for a moment. "It is, but it's also a little lonely." Liam's expression softened, and he took a seat beside me on the floor. "Sometimes loneliness can be a weight, like silence hanging in the air." His words resonated with me, echoing the feelings I had buried for so long. "Yes, it is." We talked for hours, sharing stories about our lives, our dreams, and our fears. Liam spoke about his love for Rook and how he played guitar in a local band. He had a passion for writing songs, and I found myself opening up about my poetry, about the emotions I poured into every line. "Words are powerful," he said, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "They can connect us, heal us, and sometimes even save us." I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Maybe it was time to let someone in again, to share the weight of silence that had burdened me for so long. As the weeks passed, Liam became a constant presence in my life. We spent afternoons in the bookstore, evenings at open mic nights, and late-night conversations filled with laughter and dreams. With him, the silence at home didn't feel so heavy. He encouraged me to share my poetry, to let my words breathe life again. And so I did. I began performing at open mic nights, standing on stage with shaking hands. But the moment I started speaking, everything else faded away. The words flowed from my heart, and the audience responded. I felt alive again. One night, after a particularly moving performance, Liam pulled me aside. "You have a gift, Mia," he said, his eyes filled with admiration. "You need to share it with the world." I blushed, unsure of how to respond. What if they don't like it? What if my words aren't enough? He took my hands in his grip firm and reassuring. "Your words are enough, and I believe in you." But just as I began to feel like I was finding my footing, the weight of silence returned with a vengeance. One evening, I received a phone call that shattered my world once again. It was my mother. Her voice was trembling, filled with an anguish I had never heard before. "Mia, it's about your sister." My heart dropped. Emily, the sister I had lost so many years ago. The sister whose disappearance had created the silence in our family. "Is she?" I started, but I couldn't finish the question. "She's been found," my mother said, her voice breaking. A body was discovered in the woods near Willow Creek. The world around me blurred, and I felt myself sinking into a void. I managed to choke out a response. Is it really her?" My mother's sobs were the only answer I needed. She confirmed what I had feared, and the weight of silence crashed down on me again, heavier than ever. In the following days, I found myself trapped in a haze of grief and disbelief. I barely ate, barely slept, and when I did sleep, nightmares plagued me. Yet, through it all, Liam remained by my side. He held me as I cried, comforted me through the funeral arrangements, and helped me navigate the waves of grief that threatened to consume me. "I'm here for you, Mia," he would whisper, his voice a balm for my shattered heart. "It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to grieve." I wanted to believe him, but the silence was deafening. The weight of my sister's absence felt unbearable, and I struggled to find my voice again. One evening, as I sat on the floor of my apartment, I picked up my notebook. The pages were blank, a stark reminder of the words I had once poured out so freely. With trembling hands, I began to write. I wrote about Emily, about the memories we shared, and the love that still lingered in my heart. I wrote about the silence that had choked me, the weight I had carried for far too long, and as the words flowed onto the page, I felt a shift within me. The weight of silence began to lift, replaced by the catharsis of expression. Liam found me hours later, surrounded by pages filled with my thoughts and emotion. He crouched beside me, his eyes scanning the words I had written. "Wow," he said softly, "this is beautiful, Mia. It's just how I feel." I wiped my eyes, embarrassed by my vulnerability. "But it doesn't change anything. It changes everything," he replied, taking my hand in his. "Writing is your power. It's how you'll heal." And in that moment, I realized he was right. The silence that had engulfed me for so long began to fade as I poured my heart onto the pages. Through writing, I could honor Emily's memory, and in doing so, find my voice again. As the weeks turned into months, I wrote feverishly, filling notebooks with the stories I had kept hidden. I wrote about my sister, about the darkness that had followed her disappearance, and the light that emerged in the aftermath of her loss. With Liam's encouragement, I began to share my work publicly. I performed at open mic nights, each word a step toward reclaiming my voice. The audience responded, their applause a balm for my wounded spirit. I felt the weight of silence lifting, replaced by the warmth of connection. And through it all, Liam remained my rock. He celebrated my victories, held me through my doubts, and reminded me that healing is not linear. Some days will be harder than others, he said one evening, as we sat on my couch, surrounded by a sea of notebooks. But every word you write brings you closer to peace. The day I received the acceptance letter from a publishing house felt like a dream. I ran to Liam's apartment, bursting through the door with the letter clutched in my hands. I did it. They want to publish my collection. Liam's face lit up, and he swept me into his arms. See, I told you your words would find their way. We celebrated that night, drinking wine and dancing in the living room to our favorite songs. I felt alive, like the past had finally released its grip on me. But as the excitement simmered down, I found myself reflecting on the journey it had taken to get here. The weight of silence still lingered, but it was no longer suffocating. I had found my voice again, and through that, I had also found love. The night of my book launch arrived, and I stood in front of a crowd of friends, family, and supporters, nervous but filled with gratitude. As I took the stage, I looked out at the faces that had supported me through thick and thin. Thank you for being here, I began, my voice steady. This collection, Broken Verses, is not just a reflection of my journey, but a tribute to everyone who has ever loved deeply, lost painfully, and found the courage to heal. The applause that followed felt like a warm hug, and I could see Liam in the front row, his eyes shining with pride. As I read excerpts from my poetry, I felt the weight of silence slip away completely. I was no longer just a girl mourning her sister. I was a woman reclaiming her voice. In that moment, I knew that the journey wasn't just about healing. It was about connection, about sharing our stories with the world. And as I looked at Jake at the end of my reading, I saw not just my partner, but my fellow poet, my inspiration, and the love of my life. After the launch, we celebrated with dinner at our favorite restaurant, the atmosphere electric with excitement. Over a shared dessert, I reached for his hand, feeling the warmth of his touch grounding me. Thank you for believing in me, for being my rock, I said softly. He squeezed my hand, his gaze steady. I'll always believe in you, Mia. You have a gift, and I'm grateful to be part of your journey. As we left the restaurant, the stars twinkled above us, and I felt a sense of hope blossom within me. The world felt alive, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Let's write together, I suggested, the excitement bubbling up again. Let's create a new collection that focuses on love and healing. Jake smiled, his eyes sparkling. Together. Yes, together. Our journey was far from over, and I knew that with every word we wrote, we would continue to heal, to grow, and to love. As we walked home, the cool night air filled with laughter. I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of silence had transformed into the sound of our shared verses, a melody that would guide us into the future. I realized that sometimes the most beautiful stories emerge from the brokenness, and that through love, we can find the courage to write new beginnings. In the end, it wasn't just about the broken verses, but about the love that emerged from the cracks. And as I looked at Jake, his hand in mine, I knew we were ready to write the next chapter together. If Sarah's journey through grief and healing touched your heart, Hit subscribe to join our community, where stories break the silence of our deepest struggles. Your support helps these characters find their voice, so like, comment, and share to help us continue transforming life's heaviest moments into stories of hope and connection.